Hello, everyone. A very quick English talk on how to overcome the fear of using English. If you're listening to me in English, I'm assuming you're either a teacher who is curious about this subject. If so, you're please very welcome to use what I say, or that you're trying to get input in English as well, or you might belong to the segment I particularly want to address. You might actually belong to a segment who might think there is really no problem of people being scared of English in this country. Because if so, you probably belong to a very privileged background. And the very famous saying, those who are born in privilege are often blind to it, applies to you as well. Because sometimes when you're within a structure that doesn't cheat you or doesn't challenge you with inequity, with unfairness, you might not be aware that it exists outside. So if you belong to that particular segment of society, do keep listening, because there's a huge difference you can make simply by changing your attitude towards those people whose English might not be very good, right? So let me get back to the question. How do I overcome my fear of using English? To answer that, I think it's obvious that I've taken it as a given that people are scared of English. The reason I take it as a given is my experience in teaching English in the university, where I meet students, or used to meet students every day before the online thing happened. And I can see that not only is there fear, there's also dislike, intense dislike sometimes, and a fear of using this in public, because as everything is in your youth, it becomes closely tied to the ego, and being laughed at is the last thing they want to be done towards them. Because English specifically is something that Sri Lankan society is very quick to laugh at if it's used wrong, right? You would know, like there's so many language related jokes, what you call the wrong English language related jokes, very often to do with accent, and that accent I'll deal with in a different program. And within minutes, those who know English quite fluently would either look at each other or laugh or make some kind of gesture to show that the person who is using the so-called substandard English doesn't really belong to them, right? So we have this little gatekeeping process, of which the learner is absolutely aware of. And naturally, no one wants to go there. No one wants to be in that position. It's easier to say, to heck with it, I don't want even to belong to your group. So this class group thing is strongly related to the English language, and therefore it's highly complicated here. When I say, how do we overcome this? I always say this, that you can't teach English to adults in Sri Lanka without getting politics involved, because it is political. It is an ideological thing that we are doing, simply because the way English was given to us is a highly political process. The colonizers, we got three, we had Dutch, Portuguese, and the British, but the British are the ones who put the system, education system in place, which we are still following, and therefore the English came with that and didn't get, the Portuguese and Dutch don't have that kind of standard here. So the process of that happening was anything but equal as well, because colonization itself is quite a corrupt, evil, and politically wrong thing to have done, for another nation to come and take over. Well, nations really didn't exist at the other places of the earth during that time, but it was driven by trade, it was driven by economy, and they came. And not only did they bring guns, and this I keep repeating, they also brought the knowledge to tell us that if you are not like us, you're inferior, you all are savages, your culture is nothing, we are like so-called the great ones. Okay, that came with them. Otherwise, there's no way a group of islanders could come and take over half the planet. Guns wouldn't have enough numerically. If all the Indians got up, the British would have been wiped out. But they conquered our heads first. You guys are not great enough, good enough, strong enough to overthrow us. So that the mental, ideological suppression by telling people, you guys cannot, you people cannot rise against us worked. No one did. So there were some fights, but Sri Lanka, we got it in a platter. And that kind of attitude invariably is linked with English, because it's through English that that kind of attitude came. Now, in the secondary way, English is connected to class in this way. When the British people came, there was also another wave of missionaries, where the religion came and through education, and they established many Christian missionary schools wherever they went. Some places had it easier than the others, but when the missionary schools were established, the education was in English, but it wasn't free. It was a fee-living courses that they had. And then naturally it meant that only those who, the Sri Lankans, not even called Sri Lankans then, it's only these people in the country who could afford to send people to these schools that were sending their kids to it. Jaffna had more because American missionaries were up there. So the fee-living schools meant that those who had money, and again with the British colonization, there were new classes being put in place. If you read Kumari Javardhana's Nobodies to Somebodies, you know what kind of trade they did to get rich. So there was a wealthy class created within the colonized system. Definitely the social, the hierarchy was increased class-wise with the British, but it doesn't mean we had a golden era where everybody was equal. Caste and other forms of categorization were prevalent in our parts of the world as well. So I'm not going to the place where I'm saying everything is the fault of the colonizer, right? There is no golden age you can refer to where everybody was equal. There was always hierarchy. We had monarchy before and all that. But the social class based on English was very firmly established during the British colonization period. It was connected to money. It was also connected to this feeling, those who speak English are superior beings, given by the colonizers and definitely by those who taught the native children. And that got passed down with the English language. Because remember, language isn't just a group of random words. Language has a thought system behind it. It has a culture behind it. It has a way of life behind it. So all of them together gave this feeling that those who know English are slightly superior. I don't even think slightly, quite superior to those who don't. And unfortunately, though the colonizers have gone, our class system was so firmly entrenched in Sri Lanka that this thought has never gone out of style. Never. Because automatically we connect intelligence with someone who knows English and stupidity with someone who doesn't. We have categorized things so neatly, even in dress. Like if you wear tie and coat, you'll probably be passed off to a gentleman, and especially if he speaks English, kind of, this person can't do as much wrong as somebody who wears a sarong and shirt can. I'm pretty sure all are equal rogues, but that thing is there. He's a bit of a gentleman. Right? And these attitudes have never gone out of style in Sri Lanka. You have to only look at our politics to see how these things are played out in real life. So if I were to have an adult who tells me I don't know English, I don't care, I'm not scared, that's probably not true. Because it's scaredness, it's fear, it's dislike, and all combined with a sense of inferiority that they were made to. These are centuries old attitudes that have come down. I'll be very surprised if they say we are not scared, because being scared is a given the centuries old attitudes we have passed down generation by generation. Those who know English pass those down to their kids, they pass those down to their kids. Those who don't know English have that resentment coming down the ages, built through first colonization, then class war, then the sense of inferiority that we put into ourselves. Because remember, the thing with inferiority, bad enough that people actually get others to feel inferior, but far worse is when you yourself internalize that sense of inferiority and think, yes, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not great enough. That is insidious. That is very dangerous because you have already shot yourself in the foot. If you think not knowing English is part of your problem, you're at a bad start because you are feeling bad about yourself, and that doesn't help learning. So first, try to get out of that. If someone laughs at your English, right? If you want, feel sorry for that person. Feel angry. But please don't feel bad because that is a system that has come down centuries. In our country, those who laugh at you for wrong English probably belong to that group who think knowing English makes them superior. Yes, they are rich. And in Sri Lanka, we consider rich also to be superior, that they are automatically better people, when necessarily that's not the case. But that kind of attitude that the British colonizers placed, where you are made to feel bad about your own culture, but good about the colonizers' culture, these people who laugh have carried the same attitude, which means they've carried the sense of an inferiority about their own culture that they are born into. Feel sorry if you wish, but please don't feel bad. That's one thing. Second thing, and this I want to say, those are attitudes, feelings, our culture, what we have, but there are practical stuff that we need also to be discussed, right? I would like you to refer to my interview with Dr. Prabha Manuratna, where we spoke about her article, Kolambata Kiri Apitaka Kiri, where she spoke about the intense inequality that is available in our country with regard to school, the school system. Some systems have so much resources within that, especially Colombo schools, the well-known schools, and in rural areas, there is very little, very little. Now that the central schools have also deteriorated, there's so much that they don't have. And we have put the responsibility of that kind of result of coming through a bad education system on the student itself. And she used a word called responsibilization. That is something that she says a capitalist system does. It's the responsibility of the state to have made sure that everybody got equal chances. It's not. But the guilt is made to be carried by either the students or the parents or the people in charge for failing to come to some standard. The responsibilization is a way that states take away their own culpability, their own part in making something unfair. This is very valid, I think, to English education. Because if you are judged as an adult for not knowing English, for example, when you come to campus, I've seen how bad people feel. They feel they're lesser than the Colombo, Broyle, or St. Thomas educated student who does speak English. And it's a personal thing, a personal failure. But let me ask this question. A rural student has probably not had a good English teacher, probably had not had the same resources put into their libraries, right? They may not have a chance to have spoken English that the Colombo student has, but they sit the same exam, O-level or general English or whatever. And when they fail that, the onus of the failure, the power of that we put to the students, you're not good enough. Responsibilization is that they are made to feel responsible. But if I can tell you, read Prabha's article, that is not completely your fault alone. It's also fault of the system. If you were not given English, like I went to a school that was so based on English education, so that in my house I got SInhala input. Luckily, my parents were bilingual, and in school I got such a mix that I'm completely bilingual now. But that is a privilege many don't have. In the villages, we don't have that. And then we judge that person almost as if it's a personal failure that he can't use English. Having said that, though, there are people who work through the system, work so very hard within that unfair system to somehow get to a place where they learn and are very good in English now. So my thing is not to tell you it's not your fault, do nothing. the purpose of my talks, my channel, in fact, is to tell you, yes, it's not fair. Take away the sense of inferiority that you have about not knowing English. Know that you're not responsible 100% to why you can't speak English now, but within the system, when you understand the social inequities that make you be what you are, within that work, read as much as you can, try to find books in English, talk to your librarian, at least on the internet. Within that system, you'll probably have to work much harder than a Colombo student has to, but you can learn. That is what if you look at the interviews I've done with Professor Amarakirti or Professor Sangatilakaratne, you will see it's possible. You've got to work, but do it without the sense of inferiority, do it without the sense of guilt, do it without the sense of feeling, if I don't know English, it's my failure. It's a failure if you're given a chance and still you don't take it. I've seen that in campus with this online English teaching. I've seen people given the chance to learn English and not taking it, because online system is superb to show people how to slip through the system. That's a different category where you are given a chance to learn English and you prefer not to take it, but cheat your way through. So those are personal failures. I'm not saying everything is not a personal failure, but this thing about not knowing English at the beginning might not be your fault. But if you keep remaining there saying not my fault, now that is your problem, because there are ways out. Take the way out, but do it without feeling inferior, without feeling that you're lesser than those who know English, without feeling that you're less intelligent than those who know English, because you might not have the same chances, right? So to my question, how do I overcome the fear of English? These are the answers that I can give. Once the dislike is gone, I cannot tell you don't worry about others laughing when you speak wrong English, because it's, when you're young, your ego is very, very, very sensitive and no one wants to get laughed at. So my advice there is learn the political conditions that make someone laugh at you. Feel sorry for them. Therefore, if you wish or angry, don't internalize the sense of I'm not good enough. If you're listening and you know English and you have, without knowing what you're doing, being one of those who laugh at poor English, please stop. Please understand the unequal situation of the history of this country, the present moment, what is not given to some and given to others. Don't. That laughter is cruel. Stop now. As someone recently said in one of my Facebook posts, in an encouraging environment, people do tend to speak English. Try and provide it. If you're in a position like that in your workplace or wherever you are, try and provide that. So I'm actually talking to two people. Those who laugh, I'm telling them, please understand and not do it. Don't make jokes about the accent. And then to those who get laughed, I'm saying, try to not feel bad and make it a personal failure. Try to understand the politics and the history behind it so that you don't fall and you don't fear the language. Once these psychological factors are kept aside, at least understood, because I know it's not that easy not to mind. At least if you understand it, you might work on lessening the fear you have of using English, which in turn, if you use it, you might learn it much faster and much easier. Thank you very much.